Hello everybody, I'm just a dude and this is What's Up? In this series, I'll take the time to look through the comment section and answer any questions you guys might have for me, whether it's silly, serious, or seriously silly. If you'd like me to answer one of your questions, feel free to leave a comment below. With that said, the comment I've pulled for today was created by Instagib. Thanks so much for participating, and let's see what you have to say. Since you mentioned Pokemon briefly, I was wondering if you had any trivia or anything Game Freak had worked on aside from Pokemon. Well, now that you mention it, Game Freak actually created the first ever Yoshi game. For those who were here last episode, you might recognize that this was one of the many strange titles I briefly mentioned when discussing Yoshi's odd history. And now I know who to blame for kicking off Yoshi's weird gaming conventions, Game Freak. Debuting on the NES and Game Boy in 1991, Yoshi was a falling block puzzle game. You play as Mario, and players had to clear enemy blocks by creating pairs and save Yoshis by combining two halves of like an eggshell. Oh, look at that little guy. Now, believe it or not, this was actually Game Freak's first collaborative effort with Nintendo, and the start of what was yet to come, Pokemon. Let me explain. Apparently, Ishihara and Tajiri, the founders of Game Freak, already had the idea for Pokemon long before its initial development, but they didn't have any of the funds or the backing to take the idea further. So, enter Nintendo. Nintendo came to Game Freak and tasked them with creating a Yoshi game. Knowing this could be their big break, Game Freak actually agreed to develop the game, and upon its initial release, it saw massive success. It sold over 500,000 copies in Japan on its first day. Considering that gaming was not as prevalent as it is now, that is very impressive for its time. And had it not been for the success of Yoshi, Pokemon potentially would not exist. And speaking of Pokemon, Mandel Palace, released on the NES in 1989, is the first ever Game Freak game, and it's credited for being the first inspiration to creating Pokemon. But you really wouldn't be able to tell, because this game is nothing like Pokemon. Mandel Palace is an action puzzle game that has the player moving around a grid and flipping floor tiles to attack enemies. And if you're lucky enough to have friends back in '89, you could hook up a second controller and play co-op. If I was lucky now, maybe I could find friends in general. Other than that though, there's not a whole lot to say about this game. It's a fun experience, puzzle action-y goodness, and upon release it was actually pretty successful, selling about, 60,000 copies in the United States? And because of this game, it actually allowed Game Freak to firmly place their foot in the gaming industry. Jumping forward a bit to 1994, Game Freak released a game called Pulseman, and this one's a little strange. Pulseman is a platformer that has the player play as, Pulseman, and the game is like a Mega Man Sonic hybrid. The world is filled with color and life, which makes traversing at high speeds very rewarding. The story, on the other hand, is where things start to get weird. The game's story starts with Dr. Yoshiyama, clever, and his success in having created the world's most advanced AI called Sea Life. Now, Sea Life was so advanced that she, keep that in mind, had thoughts and feelings of her own. And after some time, Yoshiyama and Sea Life fell in love. And being the real game freak that he was, Yoshiyama digitized himself and made sweet online love to Sea Life. Thus, Pulseman was born. Half human, half AI. Pulseman is the result of every gamer's dream, to screw something of their own creation. I don't want to give away too much about this game, because it really is an enjoyable experience, and it's available to play on Switch Online. So if you have that, go check it out. Now, for those who watched my previous episode, you'll know that the topic of that discussion was strange Nintendo cartridges. And lo and behold, Game Freak's done it again. Drill Dozer, initially released for the Game Boy Advance in 2005, is a puzzle platformer that follows Jill and her drill dozer as they make their way through fun and wacky stages. And wouldn't you know it, this cartridge is just as wacky, having included a rumble motor to enhance the drilling experience. Oh yeah. Continuing last episode's topic though, it's safe to assume that if certain Game Boy games were used to test the potential functions of the Wiimote, then Drill Dozer shouldn't be an exception. To this day, I'm still impressed with the clever planning and foresight of Nintendo on their part. And I can't believe I didn't talk about this cartridge last episode. Now, the final game we'll take a look at today is one that many people were actually pretty excited to see, but upon its release, it ended up being a huge flop. Little Town Hero, released for the Nintendo Switch in 2019, is one of the most meh games Game Freak has ever made. And I know that this is far from the most obscure Game Freak game, but I think its history is still something that we probably should look at and properly discuss. As we all know, by 2019, Game Freak is a gaming giant, and this is all thanks to the success of Pokemon, obviously. But at this point in their career, this is the only series that they're known for. And looking back until then, they had only made, 5 games not related to Pokemon since the early 2000s, after the release of Pokemon Crystal on the Game Boy Color. Game Boy Color. 5 games, are you kidding me? So, trying to freshen things up, they came up with the idea for Little Town Hero, a puzzle role-playing game that had the player wanting to abandon their town upon booting the game. And quite frankly, I'm not surprised. Because Game Freak had been primarily working on Pokemon games, and the fact that they had spread their development team between this game and other Pokemon games, I think maybe Sword and Shield, it's no wonder why this game did so poorly. But with the most recent announcement of Pokemon ZA and a rude awakening from Palworld, it seems like Game Freak has learned their lesson, and they're deciding to take things a little bit slower. It seems like, and I'm very surprised by this, looking at Game Freak's history here, they've had a lot of puzzle games, like Yoshi, Mendel Palace, Town Hero. They're all based on puzzle games. Even things like Pulseman, where it's more so action than puzzle, still has lots of puzzle elements. I believe there was even like a breakout or an Arkanoid stage in the game, which is really cool and more akin to what that puzzle system is like. But I didn't realize how much puzzles had influenced Game Freak in general, not just with their previously made games, but also potentially what they had done for their Pokemon games and their influence for that. And that's probably even why they leaned into the JRPG genre for gaming, because it's just a big puzzle at the end of the day. But enough about Game Freak, enough about these games. I got some announcements. I'm a little lost as to what I should be doing for this channel. I've been playing Final Fantasy for a while and I'm really enjoying it. I've also been creating these mini podcasts, which I love doing this too, and then a couple like spin-off games here and there, like I believe the last game I did was Sonic Momentum. There's the Arkanoid series that I did for a minute, just random things here and there. But I don't know what direction I should be taking this channel. So what I am asking from you guys is to please leave comments down below as to what you think I should be doing. Should I be focusing more on my gaming? Should I be doing more podcasts? Do you guys hate what I'm doing in general and want to see something else? Or maybe I should just quit YouTube altogether? Let me know. But with that said, thanks everyone for tuning in, and until next time, bye.